Hi everyone, this is Morgan, and in this video I'm going to walk you through some of the other features in the Develop module within Lightroom Classic. These still fall under the general header of basic editing. I've picked a new image partially because it has a little bit more color variation than some of the ones I've used in past videos. I've done a few basic edits to it, but you can see I've got a nice looking histogram. It does have a spike near the brighter values, but it's not going out of scale. I've done some clarity adjustments, and then here's where I can finally, again, because I've done those exposure edits first, start to think about color. So we've talked a little bit about vibrance and saturation. These sliders might serve your needs really well most of the time. Vibrance, we talked about, is adding a little bit more saturation to some of the lower saturated hues. So here you can see the parts of my image it doesn't really affect are the parts that already had like a good color saturation. So mainly in this one, jackets that people are wearing, it has a much stronger impact on lower saturated hues, which is most of the rest of the image. And just as a reminder, I'm encouraging you to do naturalistic editing. So the camera often, just through recording, reduces saturation as we perceive it. So I'm bumping it up a lot, and it still doesn't look like unbelievable when I have it at around plus 30. But you wouldn't want to go here. That no one wants that. I mean, someone does, but not me. So that's vibrance. Then we go to saturation. Saturation, I've just taken the vibrance, I'll just put it back to 0 so we can see that. Saturation, if I drag it up, you can see it impacts the brightest yellows of the landscape, but that's most of it. It has more of a blanket effect on all aspects of saturation in the image. So those are good most of the time. I'm going to scroll down. There's this whole tone curve section that I'm not going to spend a lot of time in. If you like using curves in Photoshop, there's a really good chance this is a great area of Lightroom for you to explore. It's another way of adjusting highlights, lights, darks, and shadows. Feel free to spend time with it. For just the sake of economy, I'm going to scoot down to this HSL color section. So the first thing I want you to notice here, you can select HSL or color. With HSL, we're looking at hue, saturation, and luminance. So right now, I can go to the hue panel, the saturation panel, or the luminance panel. In color, I can just select a specific hue, so in this case, aqua, and I can adjust all three for just that one color at a time. So I might want to try to figure out what my grass here is. Is it really a green? Let's drag the saturation all the way up. That's a strong vote for no, it is not really a green. Is it a yellow? Yeah, it's a pretty firm yellow. So here's where I could do a more targeted edit. So if I just wanted my yellows to be a little bit more saturated, I could drag that up. I could affect their brightness or darkness. But again, I'm just trying to kind of recreate the scene so it's closer to my memory of color. I'm not trying to take it to a crazy place. So I'm just going to brighten up a few of these specific hues. I could also change them. So if I wanted to shift around the hue, Lightroom doesn't let you go too crazy. It doesn't let you go to like the opposite side of the color wheel, but you can swing it around. I'm not going to do that here, but know that you can do that. So we could also just adjust, hue one by one, saturation one by one, luminance, or do color all at once and just slip between these options. That's all I'll show you in HSL. In split toning, again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. If you've worked with split toning before, I'd play with it here. Under detail, you can do a sharpening. There's normally a default amount of sharpening that is set here that I think is advisable. Over sharpening in an image is another easy way to over edit and make the picture more about your editing than about the content. So I'm not going to linger here either, but just so you're aware. Lens corrections, you could check remove chromatic aberration. You could check to enable a profile correction. I'm not going to do that here, but again, you could. And then transform, you could change perspective within the image, which I won't do again. In effects, the main thing that you could play around with is doing a post-cropping vignette. So by dragging down, I could add a slight vignette, up a white vignette. I'm not a fan of a white vignette. I think a very gentle dark vignette often does a really good job of drawing your viewer's attention into the image. So I might leave that there. I could play around with where the midpoint is, how round or feathered the vignette is, but I'll leave it there for now. So that's the develop stuff that I want you to pay attention to. Just so you know, again, I'm kind of just trying to give you a quick tour so you can choose your own adventure from here on out. You can play with more tools in the toolbar in Photoshop. So you have this spot removal tool, you have some red eye corrections, and you could also do more selective edits with any of these 3 tools here. That's not really necessary for this entry-level assignment into Lightroom, but I wanted you to know they were available. So that's all we're going to talk about in terms of editing within Lightroom. In the next video, I'll pick up with talking through the process of making a context sheet.